What up, my people, and welcome back to another afternoon with Chad Ricardo as I take the time to interview the top student athletes of the DMV and beyond. Today, I got a very, very special guest in the building, my main man, originally from here in the DMV, now starring up there at Harvard, RuQuan Brown. Ru, thank you very much for stopping through.
Man, it's really my pleasure to be able to stop by and kick it with you, so I appreciate you for having me.
Now, look, before I go any further, because, especially when we start talking about young men of your stature now, the DMV wants to have proper credit placed. What is it? You were a student athlete at Roosevelt, but you're a graduate of Banneker. Is that correct?
That's perfectly exactly what it was. So I graduated from Banneker. I spent all my time as a student at Banneker, and then I went up every afternoon and did all my football up at Roosevelt.
That's what's up, man. So we're going to get into all of the tough questions in just a minute. We'll highlight all of the things that you're doing and all of the differences that you make. But I like to start my guest out with a place like this because we like to intersect music into sports because that's really where the world is right now. So, Ru, tell me your top 5 musical artists of all time, any genre.
Of all time, okay.
Woo!
I woke up this morning.
All time,
I woke
bro.
up this morning listening to Anita Baker. She's definitely on my top 5. Sade has to be on my top 5 next to Anita Baker. And then I must put Prince as sort of the pinnacle of music in my personal opinion. I really like Chance the Rapper and I like Kanye West. And so it's pretty diverse, you know what I mean? A lot of range here, but I think all 5 of these artists sort of don't fit into anybody's box, and they bring just this sort of musical flavor that's just super unique and beautiful.
Follow-up question to that, bro, because obviously when you start talking about the Anita Bakers, you start talking about the Sade, like you, bro, you're just barely into your 20s right now. How do those artists end up on your list?
I think that every young person is a reflection of their parents, educators, and coaches. And that, whether that's your dance coach or your ballerina coach or your ballet coach or your football coach, we all have coaches, educators, and parents who teach us what is important and what's right. And my father, my dad was a gangster when he was young, but in order to stay in touch with his feminine side, he knew how to tap in with Mary Blige and Anita Baker and Sade Adu. And so I think that is that, I grew up on Ye when it was, Jesus Walks and Stronger and, stuff like that and Gold Digger. And that was what my mama was playing, so I just sort of am a reflection of my parents. That's all I can say.
Backpack, yeah, you can't beat backpack, yeah, you can't see it, but I got pictures of Ye on my wall, bro. That's my man's for life as well. Look, I'll take you from there, and then I'll bring you back here to the DMV for a second. You got to tell me, look around at all of your former teammates and/or anyone that you played against, or even anyone who came before you. Who is your Mount Rushmore of DMV student athletes?
Sheesh. How many people fit on?
Ru, look, I got to put you on the hot seat, bro.
How many people fit on the Mount Rushmore?
4. Holding you to 4.
My quarterback, first of all, this is one of the greatest athletes I've ever played with. My quarterback for my sophomore and junior year, Leon, was one of the greatest athletes I've ever played with. The level of confidence, the level of swag, and the athletic ability that he brought, just remarkable. So him, I would also say playing against Michael Salahuddin was, my sophomore year, that wasn't fun. That was not fun. Those right there.
Yeah,
and I think if I'm being honest, Noah Boykin also comes out of HD. He's up there because he just remarkable at his ability. And I think I want to remember people's names, so I won't put nobody if I can't remember their name. Um,
Gotcha, gotcha,
for
gotcha.
I'm gonna have to go with I'll put Levante Gator there because I think that impact he
Wow.
made in DC public schools as far as really carrying a team, that's the truth. I'm sorry, Baloo, but carrying that team for a couple of years, almost
Yeah.
beating HD damn near by itself. One like maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, man.
So those are my four right there, man. Those guys right there are ridiculous.
And then you look at, look, all of those are outstanding and upstanding young men, and you look at a couple of them and what it is that they're attempting to still do in the community. I know that Gator and his family does a ton. I know that Mike is down there at A&T now, but he still wants to give back to the community. So many of those brothers have the same aspirations as you do with wanting to make a happier, safer, healthier
Yeah,
DC.
and I think that they are able to bring that sort of passion and aspiration to it because they come from it. They really come from where
Yeah.
it's really, really ugly in our city. They come from being ignored by the mayor and by not just our mayor, but by mayors across America. They come from being ignored by we right by the Capitol, and we don't have discussions with our senators and with our Congress people. We don't get excuse me. Our presidents are not visiting our hood, and the president live up the street. So I think that the passion that I bring is just a fraction of the passion that we as a collective of DC youth have.
I look at you, right, and I hear you say these words right here, and again, for anyone hearing you for the first time, or maybe by this time for the second time, like they may be shocked or surprised to see, which is an issue in and of itself, but shocked and surprised to see a young black man be able to speak with such intelligence and such grace about himself at such a young age. But for me, like this is just kicking it with RuQuan on the daily, taking you back to when you were a freshman or sophomore, and I'm getting old, so I don't remember exactly what year, but first time that I met you, we're on a track and field DCSAA state event. God bless Clark Ray and his soul, and you come up to me. And you tell me then, like, yo, Mr. Ricardo, you might not know me now, but you will know who I am. I look back at that, and again, the world is beginning to know who you are now. What was it about yourself? What did you see in yourself that led you to know that at such a young age?
Well, I think that I was able to see my ability to achieve whatever was on my mind because up to that point I had done it. And I had done it because of the people like my mother and father who put me in position. And they told me, my mom wakes me up, as a young person each day, reminding me that I'm a superstar. And it's like,
Wow.
okay, if your mom wake you up every day to you a superstar, you have no other choice but to believe that and accept it. I was telling my sister who's 10 yesterday, like, Riari, you're a superstar, right? And uh, upset with me, she says, bruh, you always tell me that. Like, I know, like, can you tell me something else? So it's like, that
Right.
becomes the expectation. It just, listen, Mr. Ricardo, look, I'm already a few years ahead, more years ahead. So I'm just letting you know. I want to catch you up to where we're at, so that you can be ahead
Right.
as well. Because I mean, even as small as in the womb, my father was speaking life into me and into my future. So this is the other thing I would say about our parents, educators, and coaches. Young people will know what you believe about them by how you act. I knew my parents believed that I was supposed to be great because they also signed me up to play football under Deion Sanders. But you only do that if you know that your
Right.
son is that guy. My parents stifled my
Right.
opportunity. You only do that if you know your son is that guy. So I was able to believe it not just because they said it, because they also put me in position to achieve that.
Looking at you and on your trajectory, I know that gun violence has always been something that's been important to you. I'm aware of your history and your family history with that. For anyone who doesn't know you yet, how did gun violence become such a passion?
I mean, I've been scared of guns since I was probably like 5 or 6, man. So what I realized walking through DC one day on the phone with my mom, I was crying tears because I was so afraid of losing my life. Because I'm this young man who has all these things going for him, and I just imagined that, just like everybody says in the hood, the good die young. I just imagine that there's no
Yeah.
way I'm this good and life is not taken from me. And so that fear, is one component, and then there's two others. One of my teammates was murdered as a sophomore while I was a sophomore in high school, and then my stepfather was murdered the following year. And both of those men were people who, like I said, are reminding me that I'm a superstar, affirming my identity, affirming who I am while the world is constantly attacking who I am. And so to lose them was like losing a piece of my own life. And in order to protect and salvage my life, I said, I got to figure out what I can do because I'm walking the streets afraid for my life. What can I do? How can I put myself in position and other people in position to make sure that we're safer in our own communities? And that's sort of where it started for me with gun violence prevention. And I'm happy to be doing that, but I'm also sad that I have to. But it's
Sure.
necessary. I want to keep you and baby Kobe and my siblings safe, man, because it's a very dangerous world.
One of the things that, as our nation does begin to take some steps forward, we're taking a lot of steps back, but we are taking some steps forward, is that we are beginning to identify trauma, right? And we're beginning to understand trauma. We're beginning to understand the effects that trauma has on individuals. So I'm wondering, what is it about yourself that in dealing with these traumas at such a tender age, because we know how tender 14, 15 years old is, what allowed for you to take this path instead of taking the other path that so many young men and young ladies take when faced with this kind of trauma?
Well, I think I've always been encouraged to be truthful about situations and being truthful first with myself. Like RuQuan, you can go and pick up a gun or, you know, stay
Yeah, man.
high or get pregnant. You can do these things, but what's the outcome? Like, what happens next? And so, being in these neighborhoods, I'm able to see, okay, I see what happens if you pick up the gun. I see what happens if you stay high, and I see what happens if you choose to be pregnant or choose however that works, right? To be pregnant. Um,
Sure.
I don't want though. I don't want that. I don't want that. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to put myself in a different position. Because what if I have to move out of the
That's
state?
real.
If I need to move to DC with my dad to be away from the things that are happening in my neighborhood, then I'm going to do that. Because my life is so valuable to me that I can't just leave it to my community who may want to love me but doesn't know how. And it
Sure.
requires a level of honesty with
Wow.
myself. Like, look, I know my homies care about me in the hood, but they don't love me. They don't know how. Nobody taught them how to love me, and so they will certainly sacrifice my life if asked. Keeping that in mind, I say let me go somewhere where I know, even if my dad ain't the best dad in the world by the world standards, I know he would die for me. I know he'll stand up and protect
Sure.
me, and that's what I needed at 14 or 15. I was fortunate, and there's no real explanation to this part, to even have somebody that I could call to rest in. So when I'm
Sure.
discussing about politics and politicians, I'm talking about making sure that our cities and the leaders in our cities are, are ensuring that more young people have that, because it shouldn't be that a young person has to pick up the gun because they don't have somebody to call.
Let's talk about that there. The whole politician aspect of this. Just a few days ago, we're recording this on a Tuesday or a Wednesday. I'm not even sure what day of the week it is myself, RuQuan. That's what it's like when you got a young child at home. But as we go back to the March for Our Lives rally that was held in Washington D.C. on Sunday, you of course were a speaker on that event, and I'm going to paraphrase you here. But in talking about the mayor, you spoke to the fact that when the two of you had a conversation previously, she said that her intention was to help to keep the streets safer, and your statement was that had she been able to do so, she and others been able to do so, that you wouldn't be speaking
Yep.
that day. Talk to me about that statement. Give me more context. What did you mean by it?
Well, I think that I'm really glad that you added that and others because people are so
Yes.
interested in leaving that and others out, because
Well, because that's what people want to do, right? Like they want to say, well, this is RuQuan versus Bowser, right? But I understood in listening to you, I saw what you were saying. So go ahead and take
and
that.
that's why anytime you call, I'll pick up because I appreciate truth and honesty. And I think that what my message is that I sat down with Mayor Bowser, whom I reached out to because obviously she has access to serve people. That's why you become the mayor, hopefully. And I say, listen, my company just donated five figures to families and communities impacted by gun violence in Washington, D.C. I'm an 18-year-old student at the time who I shouldn't even have, by the world standards, this much money to donate,
Right.
right? And it's not my job to
Sure.
do this, but I care so much that I'm willing to do that. How can you help me help us? I shouldn't be the only kid going to Harvard from our area. There should not be CNN articles praising me for having 7 and 8 IVs. That should be the standard. That should be what children are doing.
Sure.
How can you help me with that? She encouraged me that that's not my job and that I should be a student and focus on that, that she'll take care of it. And she left the meeting. Okay, I cried after that because it hurt my feelings that much. And it hurt my feelings because
Wow.
a week before that, an 11-year-old young man named Davon McNeil was murdered in D.C., hit by a stray
Yeah.
bullet. A young man who wants
Yeah.
to achieve some of the things that that Mount Rushmore of football players, of young men, excuse me, I just named. He didn't get the opportunity because of, in my honest assessment, a high level of negligence by our elected officials. Our elected officials have accepted that these murders are just going to happen. It's just a part of the game. And they've diverted
Yeah.
their focus to other affairs. I need them to bring their focus to our lives. Because you can't say, on the one hand, introduce me and say I'm amazing, DC's own Harvard student, et cetera, but not put your money or your feet where your mouth is. And so I just need our politicians, man, to love themselves better. Because when you truly love yourself, you can't even watch yourself or allow yourself to abuse somebody else. When you truly love yourself, you can't stand and watch someone else be murdered. You can't. You have to do something about it because you know that you are them. And so I need our politicians to raise their emotional awareness. I need them to develop their relationship with self and make that better. Because right now, all of our politicians, minus a few, don't have great relationships with themselves, and it shows through their politics.
I don't want to put you directly in the crosshairs here of any kind of political conversation, of course, unless you want to dive in there. But just from a general perspective, when you look at Washington D.C., a city that you are doing a ton for and that you represent proudly, of course, we do have elections coming up. Would you like to see the current administration continue to move forward and maybe get some of their plans into action? Or in DC, is it time for a
Man, it's
change?
time for a change in DC, man, because you know it's a tough position. First, I want to acknowledge that the current system of putting all this pressure on one mayor is already not, in my opinion, is inappropriate. So I'm gonna
Sure.
follow this statement up, advocating for a very particular person or two, but I'm gonna first say, even they are not gonna be able to get everything done that we need to be done. And so every 4 years,
Yes.
Americans have this mental cycle that, okay, this time this person gonna do it. And we've been doing that since my great grandma, man. Like it don't happen like that in our country.
Yeah.
With that being said, what I'm personally most interested in is serving the most forgotten about people. Those people in Washington D.C. happen to be poor black and brown people. I'm only voting for a
Yeah, man.
politician who has the most vulnerable people in their mind and in their heart and in their hands and in their feet. So what that means is not just thinking about them and talking about them and writing about them, but putting in the work to serve them. I don't know that there are many candidates on that ballot who care through their action about poor black people. What
Sure.
we all know by scientific evidence and by plethora of Harvard research is that poor black people are the most disenfranchised group of people in our country, next to
Yes.
what some people call original American people or native people. With When it comes to politics, I'm only interested in serving the most vulnerable group of people in our country. If you're not talking about that, I don't care. And I don't know that Robert White is talking about that. I know Bowser is not doing anything about that. This is truth. She's not. I don't know that Robert White is doing anything about that. I've been in his office before. I I don't know that that's the direction poor black people should be pointing their finger. The other candidates I know personally, and even if I didn't know personally, I see Trayon White cares about poor black people, and it's
Wow.
it's clear. Anybody that sees it can see. And I wish that Americans and Washingtonians could decide, hey, let's vote for a candidate that's going to take care of poor black people. Because look, we're white and we're new to the city, or we're whatever it is, we're new to the city. We're good. We're good in America. We don't need anything else. Let's put our resources behind
Well,
someone else.
look, I think you point to another very interesting point about Washington D.C. and this is true. This is true wherever, but I think that it's really prevalent in D.C. and that is the fact that there's truly two very different DCs, bro. Like if you're uptown, you're in Northwest, that whole Chevy Chase area and everything else, like that's the Washington D.C. that you see in movies and whatnot. And then there's the DC that the rest of us that are here that we know. Is that
No,
correct?
that's exactly correct. And what's happening that's really sad is that we used to know DC as Chocolate City, which looked like
Sure.
and sound like and feels like you and me. Our city is changing,
Yeah.
not by choice. It's changing. It's being. I mean, I don't know how candid I can be, but it's being colonized. The same.
Hey, look, bro, this is just me and you talking.
It's being colonized the same way anything that is ours is. And I'm not concerned with promoting a candidate or voting for a candidate who's going to increase or support that colonization. I'm going to support a
Wow.
candidate who is willing to serve the colonized. We don't have any more. We've been colonized for 400 years, bro. Like, god damn, we still gonna keep pushing the colonization button. Like, man, that's
Right.
hard. And
Yeah,
so
man.
I
Yeah.
think that there are two different DCs,
It
and I'm really focused more on the one that has not economically developed. I'm focused on the one that doesn't have great emotional awareness and health. I'm focused on the one that doesn't have great mental health. I'm focused on the one that doesn't have great access to resources like education. And those are the politicians that I'm talking about. And I think, and I know that Trayon White has an eye, an ear, and a heart, and a hand, and a foot to care about those people.
you know my personal my calling in life is to use this sports game, to use this sports world to be able to interact with teenagers and with young people, to hopefully be able to take this and then be able to talk to them about, you know what I'm saying, the things that are real in life. And for me, especially coming out of the pandemic, when I would take my preseason tours and everything else and really get my feet on the ground around DC, the pandemic crushed Washington D.C. public schools. It crushed a lot of people. It crushed a lot of spirits. It crushed a lot of hopes and dreams that were already just hanging on by a thread. It completely cut that thread off. And in my opinion, that's one of the things that has led to the uptick in gun violence and with violence and in crime, et cetera, et cetera. So when we begin to look at whomever the next mayor is, like you said, this person can't come in. She's not, a Disney character, so he or she can't wave a magical wand and fix everything. But what are a few of the things that you would like to see focused on and done to help our people in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I think that I know that there needs to be less of a focus on um, economic development in uh, non-black communities. What I would like to see is
Sure.
actually making the lives of black people easier by putting black people in position to earn fair paying jobs. And fair means appropriate to what the cost of living is in Washington, D.C., right?
Yes.
Because this affordable housing
Yeah.
keeps going around, but it's affordable to who? Okay, exactly. And so, with that being said, I want to see us be able to live in beautiful homes and have the resources to do that, which I think is the responsibility of DC. I want to see us be in position to have more than one route to success. I want to see schools stop bragging about 100% college acceptance as if college is the only way to achieve your goals and dreams. That is like really ignorant to continue to celebrate that. In my personal opinion, I want to see more opportunities. I want young people to achieve through art, and which is film and painting and music and fashion. I also want to see more transparency from politicians to their constituents. There needs to be millions of dollars put into how to take the things that are happening in the DC Council and articulate it to the hood in a way that we can actually understand. And that's an opportunity to
Sure.
employ a lot of black people and immediately, because you take the people from the hood, you put them as the middleman between the politicians and the people, and you make sure that we, the people from the hood, can translate to our own people. Those are three easy steps that, with this knowledge of politics, black people can actually start to be a part of the conversation and take a stand. With these additional routes to success, we're not putting so much pressure on the public school system to help black people achieve. And then with the truly affordable housing, we're putting black people in real high paying jobs, and we're easing their mind and heart of all these stresses of having to pay rent, et cetera, by putting them in more comfortable situations.
I think that, again, we're both Kanye West fans, right? And for my dollar's worth, one of the most realest lines in all of hip hop or all of music is when Kanye said, "Having money ain't everything, not having it is." Right? Like you feel that, like you can, sure, you might have money and that doesn't mean that you don't have problems, but a lot of times money, if it can't solve a problem, it'll at least make those small problems feel a lot better. When you don't got nothing, Rue, and when you live in a housing complex, or if you live in the projects, or if you live somewhere where the heat's not always on, or your food, I can't think of the term right now, but you don't really have the food in the refrigerator and whatnot, that takes everything else that's going on, and that affects your whole being, right? And you wear that. So why are blacks getting in fights? Why they got, look, I'm hungry, bro, I don't got, look at where I
Whoa,
live. Like you take that
whoa,
with you
come on,
everywhere.
exactly, precisely. And what I'm
Yeah.
excited about happening, which I don't know if it's going to happen or not, but what I would like to see happen, what needs to happen, what must happen, is for us to take a systemic approach. Like we keep, sometimes the city praises itself for doing this on an individual level. Like Banneker sending 100% of their students to college
Yes.
is not enough. What about the other schools? There are
Mm.
dozens of other schools
What
in our
about the other
city. What are those
schools? Right.
students doing? Are we okay because, well, at least we have this? I don't want us to continue to take, it's disgusting to take an individual approach. That's like having a house of children and only one of them actually gets to bathe, only one of them gets to eat, only one of them brushes their teeth and has clean clothes. And so we're a good family. The other eight children haven't eaten in weeks
Sure.
or months or years, don't ever get to go outside, don't have a toothbrush, don't have opportunity, but we're a great family because that one child is doing well. That's terrible. So those three things are three things I know will
Amazing.
improve our communities, but it's gonna have to happen from a systemic level, and it's gonna require sacrifice. This is the thing that also we. This is interesting. I'm being praised around the nation right now for having courage and bravery to stand up on the stage and be honest. First of all, two things. One, the fact that I'm being praised for being honest lets you know how low America is. That's almost
Right.
like good job for waking up this morning. Like, like, good job for getting out the bed. That's terrible. For one. Two, what's terrible is I have not really seen us praise politicians for being brave. Like, which one of our mayors are gonna
Wow.
be brave and say that means something? Which one of our council members are gonna put in some legislation that is really monumental? Which one, like, which one of our presidents is gonna go up there and make a stand against racism, against poverty that like really changes the game? Don't put all this pressure on 20-year-old RuQuan, regardless of age, 20-year-old, 40-year-old, or 60-year-old RuQuan, or 40-year-old Martin Luther King. Don't put all this pressure on these people or 30-year-old Nipsey Hussle to carry the weight of the world. Like mayor and TV man and mom and grandma and teacher and coach, you go be brave too.
Wow. Takes
Takes
a
a village.
community. Takes a community. It takes all of us. And I think that, you know, as you speak on that, the one word that comes to mind for me is the one word that so much of your platform is built upon, and that's love. You speak a ton about love. Talk to me about what that means to you and why we as a people, we as a country, we as a society need more love.
I think that I know that love is the answer because I've just seen how it's transformed my life and I've seen how it's transformed other people's lives. Um, Love is like so dope because it forces you to grow internally, but then once you do, it automatically impacts your surroundings. I would think about love sort of like a flower or a tree, right? And it starts in the ground within itself as a seed. But then once it starts to really grow and develop, it actually becomes a reliable source of life for the people around it. And it's able to inspire the tree
Wow.
next to it to grow, to rest, to stand up for itself, to demand change, to be gentle in their accountability of others. It encourages bravery. So I look at love as something that should start with you and your own relationship with yourself. Because once you give yourself so much good that's free, you're going to want everybody to have that. And you're going to do whatever it takes to ensure that they have it. That's why I do what I do. It's not because I even want to do it. It's like I just do because I love me. I love love. So a byproduct of that is to get up on that stage and say what I said. That didn't take much courage or because that's what you do when you love.
So sad, bro. What's next for RuQuan Brown?
Man, I don't know. I don't know.
I asked that, right, and I like to ask that of individuals that I interview, and low key in my mind, so often I'm like, well, what's next? This dude, he about to go play video games, like that's what's next. He gonna talk about a lot of stuff, and then he's never gonna bring nothing to fruition. That's the case for a lot of young men, young women, but I know that that's not the case for you. So for you, in your purview, long term, short term, what's on
Well,
your
this is what I
radar?
want to say. Like anybody who's listening, if this part is shared, um, and I want little Kobe to know this too. We're young, and our elders often encourage us that we have so much time, and I don't believe that because there's no truth to that. There's hope, but there's no truth. And so a part of love is like being truthful. And the reality is that I don't know what tomorrow brings, but I know today I'm going to love myself really well. And I hope to tomorrow and throughout the rest of my life continue building my consulting company where I'm teaching teachers, parents, and coaches how to love Kobe, how to love RuQuan, how to love these other young people so that we can all be great, so we can actually build that village of America's next leaders and of the world's next leaders. I think right now we are at a low for America, which is America's not used to being here, but we're really low. And I think that all the things that I'm asking for, they're not going to happen. They're probably not going to happen in my generation, which is okay. But what I do want my generation to be responsible for is making sure that the next generation of young people has the infrastructure, has the love for themselves to actually go out and make real substantial change. And that's what I'm doing through my consulting company
What's up?
called Victory Village.
That is what's up, bro. I tell you, whether we're talking about from Texas to DMV to Harvard, Mr. Ruquan Brown, you say that it may not happen in your lifetime, but I'm telling everybody that's watching right now, it's going to be Ruquan Brown for
I like.
president. Brother, thank you
Thank you,
so
man. I
very
appreciate
much.
you.
Ricardo Report, bruh.